The red dust of Kepler-9 swirled around Nova's shelter, coating everything in a fine crimson powder that seemed to mock the bloodstains on her medical scrubs. 6 months of isolation on this desolate mining outpost had taught her to hate that dust, but today it might have saved a life. Through her perimeter sensors, she had detected the crash. Any other day, she might have ignored it, another piece of space debris falling from the perpetually hazy sky. But the crash pattern was too controlled, too deliberate. Someone had tried to land. Nova checked her supplies one last time: 3 doses of universal antibiotic, 2 emergency blood-clotting agents, and her last precious vial of nanite regenerator. Not much, but it would have to do. She secured her breather mask and stepped out into the howling wind. The wreckage lay half-buried in a dune about 2 kilometers from her shelter. As she approached, her handheld scanner picked up life signs, weak, but steady. The ship's design was unlike anything she'd seen before, its hull seemingly grown rather than built, with organic curves that defied traditional engineering. "Hello?" she called out, activating her mask's external speaker. "I'm a medic. I'm here to help." A sound came from within the wreckage, something between a whimper and a song. Nova's universal translator struggled to process it before finally producing words: help, trapped, burning. She found the entry point, a tear in the living metal of the hull, and squeezed through. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and something else, something sweet and cloying that her mask's filters couldn't quite scrub out. The ship's interior pulsed with bioluminescent light, growing dimmer by the second. In the pilot's chamber, she found the source of the distress call. The alien was humanoid, but that's where the similarities ended. Its skin had an opalescent quality, shifting colors like oil on water, and instead of hair, delicate tendrils floated around its head as if suspended in water. Currently, those tendrils were lying flat, a bad sign, Nova guessed. "I'm Nova," she said, approaching slowly with her medical scanner. "I'm going to help you. Can you understand me?" The alien's eyes opened, all 3 of them, revealing pupils that spiraled like galaxies. "I understand," it managed, the translator rendering its melodic language into basic human speech. "I am Rhine. Diplomatic vessel, shot down." Nova's scanner showed multiple internal injuries, severe dehydration, and something else, a systematic failure of the alien's cellular structure. "You're hurt badly," she said, already preparing a dose of nanite regenerator. "I need to give you medicine. Will your biology accept human medical technology?" Rhine's tendrils rippled weakly, a nod, perhaps. "Compatible, most species, please." Nova didn't hesitate. She administered the nanites, watching as the microscopic machines went to work repairing the worst of the damage. Rhine's color improved slightly, the opalescent sheen becoming more pronounced. "Why?" Rhine struggled to speak. "Why help unknown species?" "Because you needed it," Nova replied simply, continuing her treatment. "Though I have to admit, you're my first alien patient. The mining colony I worked for abandoned this outpost months ago. I stayed because, well, someone had to care for the sick they left behind." Rhine's tendrils swayed with more energy now. "Dangerous, they will come, looking." "Who will come?" Nova asked, but Rhine had already slipped into unconsciousness, the nanites inducing a healing trance. Nova sat back on her heels, studying her mysterious patient. She had used a third of her remaining nanite regenerator on a complete stranger, an alien who had crashed under suspicious circumstances. Her rational mind told her this was a mistake, that she should conserve resources, stay hidden, wait for the rescue ship that might never come. But as she watched Rhine's chest rise and fall with steadying breaths, she knew she'd made the right choice. This was why she'd become a medic in the first place, not to count supplies or calculate odds, but to help those in need, regardless of who or what they were. The ship's interior suddenly pulsed with a deep red light, and an alarm began to sound, not the harsh blare of human warning systems, but a mournful tone that made Nova's bones ache. Through the tear in the hull, she could see new lights in the sky, descending through the perpetual dust storm. She had to move fast. Whatever had shot down Rhine's ship was coming to finish the job, and Nova had just made herself part of this conflict by choosing to help. With practiced efficiency, she prepared her patient for transport, using her suit's enhanced strength to lift Rhine's surprisingly light form. As she carried the unconscious alien out into the storm, Nova couldn't help but smile behind her mask. 6 months of isolation, and now this, a crashed alien, mysterious pursuers, and the last of her medical supplies ticking away in an alien bloodstream. Her mother had always said Nova had a talent for finding trouble. The red dust swirled around them as she made her way back to the shelter, her footprints disappearing almost as soon as they formed. Above, the unknown ships continued their descent, but Nova had learned a few things about surviving on Kepler 9. The dust storms weren't just an annoyance, they were perfect cover for those who knew how to use them. She just hoped her remaining supplies would be enough to keep them both alive long enough to figure out what she'd gotten herself into. Nova's shelter had begun as a standard mining outpost medical unit, but 6 months of isolation had transformed it into something uniquely hers. Medical supplies filled every available surface, carefully organized by type and urgency. The walls were covered with handwritten notes on local flora and their medicinal properties, her attempts to supplement dwindling supplies with native alternatives. She settled Rhine onto her only medical bed, connecting monitors that struggled to make sense of the alien's unusual biology. The pursuing ships had disappeared into the dust storm, but Nova knew better than to assume they'd lost the trail. She initiated the shelter's camouflage protocols, another of her modifications, designed to mask heat signatures and energy emissions. "Come on," she muttered, studying the readings. "Show me something I can work with." As if in response, Rhine's tendrils began to move, their motion more agitated than before. The alien's 3 eyes opened, all pupils contracting sharply against the shelter's bright lights. "Easy," Nova said, adjusting the illumination. "You're safe. We're in my medical shelter." Rhine tried to sit up but fell back with a melodic grunt of pain. The pursuers. Lost in the storm, for now. Nova checked the nanite readouts. "The regenerator is working, but your cellular degradation is continuing. This isn't just from the crash, is it?" The alien skin rippled with colors, blues and greens that Nova interpreted as distress. "No. I am infected. It is why I came to this sector." "Searching for." A violent coughing fit interrupted Rhine's explanation. Nova watched in horror as the alien skin momentarily turned transparent, revealing internal organs struggling to maintain their form. This is some kind of targeted pathogen, Nova realized, her medical training kicking in. It's attacking your cellular cohesion at a genetic level. Why didn't you tell me before I administered the nanites? They could have accelerated the infection. Because. Rhine's voice was weaker now, because I had to know. Know what? If humans would help without condition. The stories we heard, of your species' compassion. I had to verify. Nova felt her frustration rising. So this was some kind of test. People are hunting you, you're carrying a potentially dangerous pathogen, and you wanted to conduct a social experiment? Rhine's tendrils drooped. Not experiment. Verification. My people, we are dying. This disease, engineered to target non-human sentience. We needed to know if humans could be trusted. The medical monitors began to chime warnings. Nova pushed her anger aside, focusing on the immediate crisis. Rhine's vital signs were deteriorating rapidly, the nanites struggling to repair damage that occurred almost as quickly as they fixed it. I need to know everything about this disease, Nova said, already preparing emergency stabilizers. No more tests, no more verification. Full disclosure, or I can't help you. Rhine's skin shifted to a deep purple, resignation, perhaps? The disease, created by faction that believes, universe belongs to them alone. Humans, immune. Your DNA, too chaotic, too adaptable. They cannot control it. So they decided to eliminate the competition? Nova's hands flew over her medical equipment, trying to slow the cellular breakdown. Real sophisticated bunch. They call themselves, the purists, Ryan managed between labored breaths. Believe they can, reshape galaxy, through genetic cleansing. Your people, next target. Not for elimination, for exploitation. Your immunity, they want to understand it, control it. Nova's mind raced. The implications were staggering, but she forced herself to focus on the immediate problem. The nanites aren't enough. We need something stronger, something that can stabilize your genetic structure long enough to develop a proper treatment. She reached for her supplies, hand hovering over her last vial of nanite regenerator. It was her only lifeline if she got sick or injured, the only thing keeping her alive if rescue never came. But Ryan's readings were getting worse by the second. A sudden explosion rocked the shelter, sending instruments crashing to the floor. Through her perimeter sensors, Nova saw multiple figures approaching through the storm, wearing environmental suits that seemed to repel the dust itself. "They're here," Ryan whispered, tendrils writhing in distress. "You must, let me go. Save yourself. The information must reach Earth." Nova looked at the vial in her hand, then at her dying patient. 6 months ago, she'd stayed behind because she believed that everyone deserved care, regardless of circumstance. Had isolation changed that? Had survival made her forget why she became a medic in the first place? Another explosion, closer this time. The shelter's defenses wouldn't hold for long. "Well," Nova said, preparing the injection, "I guess we're about to find out if I'm as good a doctor as I think I am." She administered the last of her nanite regenerator, watching as the microscopic machines flooded Ryan's system. It was a desperate gamble. Too many nanites could overwhelm an already compromised system, too few would be useless against the engineered pathogen. "What are you doing?" Ryan asked, all three eyes wide. "Proving your verification test correct," Nova replied, already gathering what portable supplies she could. "Now, let's see if I can figure out how to cure an alien plague while running for our lives." Just another day at the office, right? The shelter's walls groaned under another impact. Through the dust, Nova could see energy weapons powering up. She had minutes, maybe less, to save her patient, escape her pursuers, and somehow find a way to stop a galaxy-wide genocide. Her mother had always said Nova had a talent for finding trouble. Time to see if she had a talent for getting out of it, too. The abandoned mining tunnels beneath Kepler-9's surface were Nova's last resort. She'd mapped them during her months of isolation but had avoided using them, too many cave-ins, too many ways to get lost in the darkness. Now, as she half-carried Ryan through the twisting passages, those maps were their only hope for survival. "They won't be able to track us down here," Nova said, her headlamp illuminating the rust-colored walls. "The mineral deposits interfere with their scanners. Same reason the mining company had so much trouble finding profitable veins." Ryan's skin had taken on a ghostly luminescence, providing additional light but signaling continuing cellular stress. "The nanites, they are helping, but they're not a cure," Nova finished, checking her portable medical scanner. "They're buying us time, nothing more. We need to find something more permanent." They reached a junction in the tunnels, and Nova paused, consulting her mental map. The purists would be searching the surface, assuming they'd fled into the storm. Few would expect anyone to risk the unstable tunnel network. "There's something I don't understand," Nova said as they rested. "Why come here? Of all places, why crash on an abandoned mining planet?" Ryan's tendrils moved weakly, a gesture Nova was beginning to recognize as thoughtful consideration. Not random choice. Before the mining colony, this place had another purpose. Nova felt a chill that had nothing to do with the tunnel's temperature. What kind of purpose? Research facility, joint project between species. Studying human genetic adaptability. The dust, it contains trace elements, catalyzes genetic modification. That's why the mining operation failed, Nova realized. They weren't looking for valuable minerals. They were looking for these trace elements. But something went wrong, didn't it? Rhine's middle eye fixed on Nova while the outer ones scanned the darkness. Project, discovered by purists. Facility, attacked. But data, survived. Hidden. And you came looking for it, Nova said. For a cure. For hope, Rhine corrected. The research could prove all species have potential for adaptation. Disprove purist ideology of genetic superiority. A distant rumble shook dust from the tunnel ceiling. The purists were using scanning charges, trying to map the tunnel network. They were running out of time. This research facility, Nova said, can you find it? Rhine's skin rippled with determination. Through you, yes. Human DNA resonates with trace elements. You can feel it? Nova had always attributed her ability to navigate the tunnels to good memory and luck. But now that Rhine mentioned it, she did feel something, a subtle pull, a sense of rightness about certain passages. Third junction on the left, she said, suddenly certain. There's something there. I've felt it before but never investigated. Thought it was just another dead end. They moved as quickly as Rhine's condition allowed, following Nova's instincts through the maze of tunnels. The rumbling grew more distant, the purists were searching in the wrong direction. The passage ended at a blank wall that looked no different from any other. But Nova's scanner showed something unusual, a pattern of those trace elements Rhine had mentioned, too precise to be natural. It's here, Rhine confirmed, touching the wall with trembling fingers. Hidden entrance, genetic lock, keyed to human DNA. Nova placed her hand on the wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the trace elements began to glow, spreading out from her touch in a complex pattern. The wall simply ceased to be, revealing a chamber beyond. The facility had been untouched for years, but its systems hummed to life at their entrance. Holographic displays activated, showing research data in multiple languages. Medical equipment far more advanced than anything Nova had ever seen lined the walls. This is incredible, Nova breathed, taking in the technology. With this equipment, we might actually have a chance to. She stopped as Rhine collapsed, the alien skin becoming almost completely transparent. The nanites were failing. No, Nova rushed to her patient's side. Hold on. We found it. We can figure this out. Rhine's three eyes focused on her with difficulty. Time, running out. Purists, will find us. Then we better work fast. Nova began activating the facility's equipment. I'm not losing my first alien patient, especially not after using up my last nanite regenerator on you. She interfaced her medical scanner with the facility systems, letting them analyze Rhine's condition. The results were both fascinating and terrifying. The purists' engineered pathogen wasn't just attacking Rhine's cellular structure, it was trying to rewrite it, to force it into a more pure form that the alien's body couldn't sustain. Look at this, Nova said, displaying the data. The disease isn't just destroying, it's transforming. But it's like it's working from an incomplete template. Rhine's tendrils moved weakly. They lack understanding. Try to force evolution. Evolution doesn't work that way, Nova muttered, diving deeper into the facility's research. It's not about forcing a specific form. It's about adaptation. Her eyes fell on a section of research about human genetic diversity, about how Earth's various environments had shaped humanity's development. About how that same adaptability had let humans survive on worlds like Kepler-9. "That's it," she whispered. "We don't need to fight the transformation. We need to guide it. Let your cells adapt on their own terms." A proximity alarm blared. The purists had found the right tunnel. Nova looked at her patient, at the research that could save not just Rhine but countless species, at the approaching enemies who would destroy it all. She'd spent 6 months in isolation, protecting her dwindling supplies, waiting for rescue. Now she had minutes to attempt a medical breakthrough while preparing for a fight. Her mother had always said Nova had a talent for finding trouble. Time to see if she had a talent for solving it, too. Nova's fingers flew across the facility's holographic interfaces, decades of research streaming past her eyes. Behind her, Rhine's breathing grew more labored as the nanites fought their losing battle. Above, the sounds of the purists' approach echoed through the tunnel network. The research team was close, she muttered, sorting through data. They'd discovered how human DNA adapts to environmental changes without losing stability. They were trying to replicate that process in other species, but the war started before they could complete their work. "How much time?" Rhine asked, skin fluctuating between transparency and solid form. Nova checked her medical scanner. "The nanites are failing. Maybe 20 minutes before total cellular collapse." "The purists?" She glanced at the proximity sensors. 15 minutes, tops. She turned back to the research, forcing herself to focus. The facility's equipment was analyzing Rhine's genetic structure in real time, showing how the purist's pathogen was attempting to force changes that should have taken generations to occur naturally. "Look at this," Nova said, highlighting a particular data stream. "Human DNA doesn't just adapt, it preserves successful adaptations while maintaining flexibility for future changes. But the purist's pathogen, it's trying to force a single, rigid pattern. That's why it's killing you." A series of explosions rocked the facility. The purists were blasting their way through collapsed sections of tunnel. Nova's mind raced. She had the pieces of the puzzle: human adaptive genetics, the trace elements in Kepler-9's dust that catalyzed genetic modification, and a dying patient whose cells were desperately trying to survive. "I have an idea," she said, moving to the facility's medical manufacturing unit. "But you're not going to like it." Rhine's tendrils curled weakly. "Worse than dying?" "Maybe." Nova began programming the unit. "The purist's pathogen is trying to force your cells into a specific pattern. But what if we use my DNA, specifically the adaptability markers, to teach your cells how to adapt on their own? Cross-species, genetic modification?" Even in her weakened state, Rhine managed to convey shock. "Never been done successfully. That's because everyone tries to control the process." Nova's hands moved faster as ideas crystallized. "But human DNA, it's chaos, remember? Unpredictable. What if that's not a weakness? What if it's exactly what we need?" The manufacturing unit hummed to life, combining Nova's genetic material with the trace elements from Kepler-9's dust. The result was a shimmering liquid that seemed to move of its own accord. "This could kill you faster than the pathogen," Nova warned, preparing an injection. "Or it could save your life. But you have to choose." More explosions, closer now. Through the facility's sensors, they could see the purists' heat signatures approaching, a dozen heavily armed soldiers led by a figure whose environmental suit crackled with energy. Rhine's 3 eyes fixed on Nova. "Why risk this?" "More than duty now." Nova smiled sadly. "Because 6 months ago, I stayed behind to help people who needed me. If I give up on that principle now, if I let fear of failure stop me from trying, then I'm not the person I thought I was." "Then, do it," Rhine whispered. "Show them what adaptation truly means." Nova administered the injection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Rhine's body began to glow from within, her cells lighting up as they encountered the modified human DNA. The alien skin rippled with colors Nova had never seen before, colors that might not have existed until this moment. "Remarkable," a new voice said from the facility's entrance. "Using human genetic chaos to promote controlled adaptation. We've been approaching the problem from the wrong direction entirely." Nova turned to face the Purist's leader, whose helmet had retracted to reveal features that might once have been human but were now artificially, unnaturally perfect. "Commander Voss," Rhine managed, her voice stronger as her cells continued their transformation. "Come to witness your failure?" "Failure?" Voss smiled, the expression too symmetric to be natural. "I see a successful experiment. Proof that genetic modification can create perfection. Though perhaps not the perfection we originally envisioned." Nova stepped between Voss and her patient. "This isn't about perfection. It's about survival. About finding ways for all species to thrive together. And that's why you humans are so fascinating," Voss said, raising a weapon that pulsed with genetic disruptor energy. "Such noble sentiments, such commitment to cooperation. It will make controlling you so much more satisfying." Behind Nova, Rhine's transformation reached its peak, the alien's body emanating light that filled the chamber. The Purist soldiers raised their weapons, but Voss held up a hand, watching with scientific curiosity. "You want to see adaptation?" Nova challenged, buying time as she felt Rhine's presence growing stronger behind her. "Watch carefully. You might learn something about what real evolution looks like." The chamber erupted into chaos as Nova's gamble played out, and the true power of uncontrolled adaptation was revealed. The light emanating from Rhine's transformed body filled the ancient facility, casting strange shadows as the alien cells completed their adaptation. Where the Purist's pathogen had tried to force a rigid pattern, Nova's treatment had unleashed something entirely new, evolution guided by survival rather than ideology. Rhine rose from the medical bed, her form fluid yet stable. Her opalescent skin now rippled with patterns that seemed to absorb and redirect the genetic disruptor energy from the Purist's weapons. The tendrils around her head moved with purpose, each one glowing with its own inner light. "Impossible," Voss breathed, scientific curiosity warring with mounting horror. "The genetic structure should have collapsed. There should be total cellular failure." "You never understood," Nova said, watching as her patient became something unprecedented. "Life doesn't follow rigid patterns. It adapts. It survives. It evolves. By accepting chaos?" Voss's perfect features twisted in disgust. "By abandoning the pursuit of perfection?" "By embracing change," Rhine answered, her voice now a harmony of frequencies that made the facility's crystal displays resonate. "By understanding that diversity is strength." The Purist soldiers opened fire, their genetic disruptor beams intended to unravel any living thing they touched. But where they struck Rhine's transformed body, the energy was absorbed, processed, and redirected. The alien cells had learned from human DNA how to adapt to threats, how to turn attacks into advantages. "Stop them," Voss commanded, but it was too late. The redirected energy pulses struck his soldiers, their supposedly perfect forms unable to adapt to their own weapons. One by one, they collapsed, their rigid genetic structures unable to handle the chaos they had unleashed. Nova moved quickly, administering emergency stabilizers to the fallen soldiers. Even now, even against enemies who would have killed her without hesitation, she remained true to her calling as a medic. "Why?" Voss demanded, watching her work. "Why save those who would destroy everything different from themselves?" "Because that's what humanity does," Nova replied, checking vital signs. "We adapt. We survive. And we help others do the same." Rhine moved to the facility's main console, her transformed body interfacing directly with its systems. "The research here, it was never about creating perfection. It was about understanding how to help all species survive together. Your pursuit of genetic purity blinded you to the true power of adaptation. The facility's displays came alive, showing the successful merger of human adaptive genetics with Rhine's cellular structure. But more than that, they showed the potential, how this discovery could help countless species survive the purist's genetic weapons. "It's over, Voss," Nova said, standing beside her transformed patient. "Your weapon failed. But something better has emerged from your failure. You think this is over?" Voss laughed, the sound utterly without humor. "This is one facility. One experiment. The purist movement spans galaxies. We will not be stopped by one human's misguided compassion." "Not one human," Rhine corrected. "All of humanity. Their chaos, their adaptability, their endless capacity for change, it terrifies you because it proves your ideology wrong. Perfect order is stagnation. True strength lies in diversity." Nova checked her medical scanner, marveling at Rhine's new genetic structure. "The treatment, it's not just stable. It's reproducible. We can save others infected by the purist's pathogen. We can help species adapt naturally, on their own terms. And that," Rhine said, her three eyes fixed on Voss, "is why you will fail. Not through force, not through conflict, but through the very adaptation you sought to prevent." Voss raised his weapon one last time, its power at maximum. "Then perhaps it's time to see if your adaptation can survive total genetic disruption." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Voss fired, the weapon's energy cutting through the air like liquid lightning. Rhine moved to shield Nova, her transformed body ready to absorb the blast. But Nova, acting on instinct and training, had already prepared a countermeasure. The genetic stabilizer she'd synthesized from the facility's research struck Voss at the same moment his weapon discharged. The blast went wide, striking the facility's power core, as Voss collapsed, his artificially perfect form beginning to shift and change. What have you done to me?" he gasped, watching his hands lose their unnatural symmetry. "Saved you," Nova answered simply. "Your cells are remembering how to adapt. How to be human again." As emergency containment fields activated around the damaged power core, Nova looked at her unlikely ally, an alien transformed by human genetics, yet still uniquely herself. "Think the universe is ready for what we've discovered here?" Rhine's tendrils moved in what Nova now recognized as amusement. "The universe has no choice. Evolution does not ask permission to advance." "Neither does healing," Nova agreed, already planning how to mass-produce the treatment. "And I've got a lot of patients to tend to." The facility's systems began backing up their research as the power core stabilized. Outside, the dust storms of Kepler-9 continued their endless dance, carrying the trace elements that had made this breakthrough possible. Elements that, like humanity itself, had been dismissed as too chaotic to be useful, only to prove essential to survival. Nova looked at her empty vial of nanite regenerator, the last dose she'd sacrificed to save a stranger. Its loss no longer seemed like a gamble, but an investment in something greater than mere survival. Her mother had always said she had a talent for finding trouble. Turned out she had a talent for finding solutions, too, solutions that came not from imposing order, but from embracing the beautiful chaos of life itself.